Hello, hockey skaters and goalies around the world. Welcome back to another edition of the Ride to the Rink. We are talking directly to you today. We have a great friend here, John O'Sullivan, who is heavily involved in youth sports. He's a mentor to me and a lot of people out there. And we want to talk to you a little bit about the situations you run into as kids where maybe you don't like the messages your parents are giving you, or maybe they're talking too much in the car after the game. Whatever it is, it might be an uncomfortable moment where you just maybe need a little space. We want to ask John today, how, John, should those kids approach that conversation with their parents of maybe this is a little overbearing, and what can we do differently to make this more comfortable?
That's a great question. And to all you young players out there, thanks for listening to this. Um, I like to think from my own time growing up as an athlete to raising my own kids that car ride to games and from games, that space has to belong to you. That's your choice in that moment to decide, do I want to talk about the game or do I need to do something else, to whether before the game to mentally prepare myself or after the game to emotionally and physically recover. So one of the best things that you can do, because I know how miserable it can be when you're get in the car after a game and maybe your team lost or maybe you didn't do well, and you're thinking, oh god, what's dad going to say, what's mom going to say. And what I'd like you all to do is be able to have a conversation with your parents beforehand and say, you know what, mom and dad, if I asked you, how do you think I did, or asked you to talk about the game, then that means I would like to talk about it now. But if I don't ask you, if I don't bring it up, then can we just go get lunch or go get dinner and just have some time? Because that means I'm not ready to talk about it yet. And if you want to not talk about the game with your parents and the ride home, um, what you need to do is come to an agreement with them when is a good time to talk about it. So maybe it's after dinner before you go to bed that night. Maybe it's the next morning before breakfast. Whenever it is, your parents who drive you around and make all this commitment, they're allowed to have a conversation with you about your sporting experience. But your job is to tell them when's a good time to have that conversation. So have the courage to do that. Don't do it in the car ride after. Do it away from the rink, away from practice, not after a game, and come up with a great time to have those conversations and some rules and boundaries around them. And if you can do that with your parents, then you're going to have a much happier sports experience.
And John, one more thing I want to tap on with this is that, and that was fantastic advice for the kids listening. I know having that conversation can seem really scary, right? Because your mom or dad or guardian might really seem like they care about the game, and they probably do, but they care about you more than that game. And the reason I know that is because if they didn't care, they wouldn't talk about it at all. All right. They're
Mhm.
talking to you because they care. So, John, my follow-up question is this. If a kid is scared to talk to their parents, what is your advice to them to maybe understand that from a grown-up point of view of why it's okay to have this conversation?
Well, of course, sometimes it's intimidating to talk to our parents, and number one, recognize that they're only having these conversations because they love us, right? So it's coming from a good place. Um, so have the courage to do that. That's part of growing up, is having the courage to advocate for yourself. And number two, if you don't have the if you just feel like I can't do that, but the car ride home, let's say, is miserable all the time, then maybe you ask your coach and you say, hey coach, listen, could you help me talk to my parents, because after the game they always want me to spend 45 minutes talking about every aspect, and I just don't want to do it then, and it's really hard and I always get upset. Can you help me talk to them so we can find a better time? So sometimes your coach can be a great advocate in that moment to find a better time as well.
That's a phenomenal answer, John, and phenomenal advice to this audience. And kids listening, this one is a tough one, right? But it's one that I'm glad that we explored today on the ride to the rink. Mike, do you have anything before I close this out?
No, this is great. I think just to have that opportunity to really have a conversation with your parents. Your parents want you to have a conversations with them. So don't feel like you can't do it. Just use this as your opportunity to open the door.
I love it. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Ride to the Rink. John O'Sullivan, always a great guest. Mike Benelli, always a great best friend. And I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next Ride to the Rink. Remember, kids, skate hard, have fun. We believe in you. You should too. We'll see you on the next edition. Have a good day.